The night the valley learned fear, the streets were silent. Not the peaceful silence of sleep, but the heavy stillness that follows disaster. Doors stood open. Windows were shattered. Tools lay abandoned where hands had dropped them mid-motion. Bodies were scattered across the stone paths, unmoving, their shapes barely visible beneath the moonlight. This was not the aftermath of a fight. It was the aftermath of something far worse. Whatever had come to the village had not struggled. It had not hesitated. It had simply arrived untaken. And it was still there. Something moved between the houses, a shape darker than the night slid along the ground, its many pointed limbs clicking softly against stone. It paused often, tilting its distorted form as if listening for breath, for movement, for fear. Somewhere inside the largest house in the village, the last survivors huddled together. They shook in silence, hands clasped over mouths, hearts pounding so loudly they feared it might give them away. They followed one rule. Keep your eyes closed, no matter what you hear, no matter what you feel. Keep them closed. The elders' words echoed in their minds, steady and absolute. And to think, only days ago, this place had been peaceful. The village lay deep within a mountain valley, hidden between steep green slopes and winding rivers. Long before maps had names for places like this, people lived here quietly, content to be forgotten by the wider world. The mountains provided shelter. The forests provided food. The land, though harsh, gave enough for those who respected it. The villages were herders and farmers, weavers and tanners. Their lives followed the rhythm of the seasons and the rising and setting of the sun. They were strong people, shaped by thin air and cold nights. Children learned to walk on uneven stone. Elders carried the wisdom of survival etched into their bones. And like many who lived so close to nature, they believed the world held more than what could be seen. They believed in spirits that watched from the peaks, in forces that moved through the forests unseen, and in monsters that should never be invited into human lands. Outsiders might have called them superstitious. But superstition is often just experience passed down without explanation, because monsters have always existed. The only difference is whether anyone is prepared when they arrive. It began with a missing boy. He was old enough to hunt alone, young enough to still feel invincible. At dawn, he had taken his bow and disappeared into the forest, promising to return before sunset. When the sun dipped below the ridgeline and he had not come back, worry crept into the village like a cold wind. By nightfall, fear had taken root. A search party formed quickly. Torches were lit. Simple weapons were gathered. Fathers, brothers, and neighbors ventured into the forest, calling the boy's name into the dark. The mountains were dangerous. Yes, predators lived there. Accidents happened, but none of them were prepared for what they would find. Hours later, deep among twisted roots and towering trees, someone shouted. They found the boy lying in a shallow clearing, barely conscious, his breath weak and uneven. His skin was pale. His body trembled. 3 long wounds crossed his chest, deep enough to frighten, but not deep enough to explain what was happening to him. No animal they knew left marks like that. No animal they knew hunted this way. They carried him back in silence, fear growing heavier with every step. The village healer worked through the night. He cleaned the wounds, applied poultices, and whispered prayers older than the village itself. He watched the boy's breathing, listened to his chest, and frowned at what he heard. The wounds were not the problem. Something else was wrong. The boy's condition worsened by the hour. His skin grew cold. His eyes struggled to focus. His breath rattled as though his body were fighting something he could not see. By dawn, he was gone. His final words were barely audible, spoken only to the healer who leaned close enough to hear them. There's something in the forest. The healer said nothing at first, but fear settled deep in his chest, because he knew the boy was telling the truth. Over the following days, the village began to unravel. People fell ill without warning. Livestock disappeared from their pens, leaving behind only broken fencing and silence. Those who ventured too close to the forest returned shaken. Speaking of shadows that moved when nothing should have moved at all, crops began to fail. Leaves curled and blackened as though touched by unseen hands. The land itself seemed to recoil. At night, sounds echoed from the tree line. Clicking, scraping, low, distorted noises that made sleep impossible. The truth could no longer be denied. Something had claimed the valley, and it was hungry. The villagers gathered in the square as fear pushed tempers to the surface. Voices rose. Accusations followed. Some demanded that they hunt the creature down. Others argued that such a hunt would leave the village unprotected. Panic threatened to turn neighbor against neighbor. Then the tapping of a cane struck the stone. Once, twice, 3 times. The elder stepped forward, blind and bent with age. He carried himself with a calm that silenced the crowd instantly. His presence alone seemed to steady the air. "There is a way," he said. Hope flickered. He spoke of an ancient guardian that lived high in the mountains. A being called upon only when all other paths had failed. But there is a rule, he warned. One rule above all others. You must never look upon it. If anyone saw the guardian's face, he said, the consequences would be worse than the monster they already faced. Fear argued. Desperation agreed. The village gave its consent. The elder left before dawn. He climbed alone, guided not by sight, but by memory and stories passed down through generations. Each step was slow. Each breath was labored. But he did not stop. By nightfall, he reached a forgotten cave carved deep into the mountainside. From within, he heard soft weeping. He knew then that the guardian still waited bound by duty, bound by sorrow. The eldest spoke the old words and tied a rope with shaking hands, not to control the guardian, but to guide it. Together, they began the long descent. Night fell before they returned, and the monster chose that moment to reveal itself. It appeared in the village square in a flash of distorted light, its shape wrong in ways that made the mind recoil. Long limbs struck the ground like spears. Its presence bent the air, pressing down on everything around it. Those who tried to fight were cut down in moments. The survivors fled into the largest house, slamming the doors shut behind them. They clutched one another, eyes squeezed shut, obeying the elder's command even as terror clawed at their senses. They heard screams. They heard silence. They waited. The ground trembled. Something else had arrived. The guardian entered the village, guided by the elderess' steady hand. The monster turned and looked. The guardian's cry split the night, a sound of grief, rage, and ancient purpose. The battle that followed shook the valley. Stone cracked. The earth shuddered. The monster unleashed its power, twisting reality itself in its fury. But the guardian did not fall. Wounds closed as quickly as they formed. The elder was struck down in the chaos, his sacrifice sealing the village's fate. The guardian seized the monster and did not release it. When silence returned, the night felt empty. At dawn, the survivors opened their eyes. Their village lay in ruins. Their people were gone. Their lives would never be the same, but the monster was gone too. They would rebuild. They would remember. And high in the mountains, a cave once again echoed with quiet weeping, waiting for the next time humanity needed protection from the things that walk unseen in the dark.